Let me ask you something. If you didn't have a job, no alarm clock, no boss, no schedule, what do you think you'd actually do with your day? Most people assume the answer is obvious. Endless, exhausting labor just to survive until tomorrow. Researchers actually tested that assumption directly, and the number they found should genuinely surprise you. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why that number changes everything about how we think work itself was invented. Here's the study that broke the myth. In the 1960s, an anthropologist studied a hunter-gatherer group in the Kalahari Desert, one of the last populations still living the way humans did for most of our existence. Before agriculture, before cities, before jobs. He expected to document a brutal, exhausting struggle for survival. Instead, he tracked their actual hours and found something almost nobody predicted. Adults in that group spent roughly 15 to 20 hours a week on activities directly related to getting food. Not 50, not 60, 15 to 20. Less than half of a modern full-time work week, just to keep the entire group fed. That's suspect number one, and it points somewhere researchers hadn't fully appreciated. There are three specific things ancient daily life actually involved once you strip away the modern myth of constant, desperate labor. And the third one is the part that makes the first two feel like a warm-up. The first thing is that hunting and gathering wasn't constant grinding effort. It was targeted and efficient. Gathering, done primarily by groups working together, involved deep, specific knowledge. Which plants were edible in which season, where water collected after rain, which roots stayed nutritious through a drought. That knowledge meant less wasted effort, not more. Hunting was less frequent, but higher stakes, and successful hunts produced enough meat to feed a group for days, meaning the actual time investment averaged out lower than people assume. This wasn't a desperate scramble every single day. It was skilled, seasonal, and surprisingly efficient work, built on generations of accumulated environmental knowledge, passed down specifically so nobody had to relearn it from scratch. The second thing is where the real surprise sits. Because if only 15 to 20 hours went toward survival, what filled the rest of the week? Anthropologists studying multiple hunter-gatherer societies found the remaining time went toward things that look strikingly familiar: tool-making and repair, which doubled as a social activity. Groups sitting together crafting and talking. Childcare, shared communally rather than falling on one or two people alone. Storytelling and oral tradition, which functioned as both entertainment and the primary method of passing down survival knowledge to the next generation. And rest. Genuine, unstructured rest. Sitting, socializing, doing essentially nothing productive by modern standards for substantial portions of the day. The picture that emerges isn't grinding desperation. It's closer to a life with more unstructured time than most people working modern jobs have today. Now here's the third thing, the one that makes the first two feel like a warm-up, because it's not about how much time ancient humans spent working. It's about when everything changed, and it happened faster and more recently than people assume. The shift wasn't gradual. It traces back to one specific development: agriculture, roughly 12,000 years ago. And here's the part almost nobody explains correctly. Agriculture didn't reduce daily labor. Multiple studies comparing skeletal remains before and after the agricultural transition found early farmers were shorter, more malnourished, and showed more signs of repetitive physical strain than the hunter-gatherers who came before them. Farming demanded far more total hours of labor, tied to a rigid seasonal calendar that couldn't be skipped or delayed. Planting, tending, and harvesting, whether you felt like it or not, in a way hunting and gathering never required. Here's the part that connects all three of these back to that opening number. If farming required more labor and produced worse health outcomes, why did it spread everywhere? Because agriculture produced a stored, transportable surplus, and that surplus meant, for the first time in human history, some people could be fed without gathering food themselves. That surplus is what allowed specialization to exist at all. Some people became full-time tool makers. Others became religious leaders. eventually soldiers, then merchants, then, thousands of years later, something resembling a job. Not because specialized labor made life easier. It didn't, especially at first, but because surplus finally made it possible for someone to survive without directly producing their own food. So knowing all three of these forces, efficient targeted survival labor, abundant unstructured communal time, and the agricultural surplus that eventually created specialized work, what does an ancient day actually look like once you strip away the myth? A relatively short, skilled window spent securing food. A much larger portion of the day spent on childcare, tool repair, storytelling, and simple rest. Activities modern people now pay significant money and vacation time to reclaim. The job, as a fixed daily structure demanding most of your waking hours, isn't ancient at all. It's a comparatively recent invention built on a food surplus that made specialization possible, then necessary, then, eventually, mandatory for almost everyone. So go back to the question at the start of this video. What did ancient humans actually do all day before jobs existed? Less grinding than you'd assume, and more unstructured time than most people managing modern work schedules will ever experience. You now know something most people never learn, even after a full education. The 8-hour workday isn't human nature. It's a relatively recent arrangement. And for the vast majority of human history, we didn't actually live that way at all. If this changed how you think about ancient daily life, hit subscribe, because next week's video breaks down exactly how the concept of a 7-day week and a fixed clock got invented, and why neither one has anything to do with nature at all.